What would professional wrestling be without baby faces? It would just be a bunch of unlikable idiots fighting each other, and if I wanted to watch that, I'd stick the UFC on. Kidding, calm down, people. I totally respect MMA fighters, and I have zero interest in getting my head kicked clean off by someone with bad tattoos and questionable politics. And in truth, both UFC and WWE thrive because of strong personalities and their performers playing a character, whether hero or villain, protagonist or antagonist, dickhead or upstanding member of society. Most WWE stars will fluctuate between the two throughout their careers in order to keep themselves fresh and open up more possibilities as far as new matches and storylines go. And the majority of them will probably tell you that playing the bad guy is better, since they typically lead the action and it's far easier to get someone to hate you than to like you. Not for everyone though, of course, as there are a select few who have never turned heel in WWE. Yes, some stars are simply so endearing that they were never turned either by the company or the fans themselves, and in some cases are still being cheered to this day. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 WWE stars who never turned heel. Join us. Number 10, Rey Mysterio. It would be very hard to boo someone like Rey Mysterio, unless of course he was the unlucky number 30 entrant in a Royal Rumble and people were expecting Daniel Bryan. Poor Rey. His awe-inspiring offense, colourful look and personality, and all-round likability have meant that Rey has been one of the good guys since debuting in WWE almost 2 decades ago. The Biggest Little Man was also a good guy in Mexico, ECW, and WCW too, at least most of the time. In the wacky world of latter-day WCW, Mysterio briefly became a heel as a member of the Filthy Animals stable, which also included Eddie Guerrero and Billy Kidman. The reason you may not hear about this short conversion to the supposed dark side is because it was also around the same time that Rey unmasked and began sporting dungarees and stick-on devil horns. Man, has Vince Russo ever had a bad idea? Since then though, the saintly underdog hasn't even so much as hinted as playing anything other than the hero. It would be difficult for him to do so now, given his size, style and legacy that have all helped define him as someone who will likely retire from the business having never properly portrayed a baddie. Number 9, Ricky Steamboat. The key to what made Ricky Steamboat such a good babyface was his selling. The Dragon could take a hip toss and have you believing he was in life-threatening danger, so wonderfully expressive was he when taking a beating. Steamboat used to routinely watch footage of the way boxers would move during fights in order to see how they would react when hit for real, and it was this commitment to feigning pain that made him so sympathetic. I mean, he was also good-looking, had a chiseled physique, and performed high-flying moves, which may have helped him some too. As did having great foils to play off, whether it was the diametrically opposed Ric Flair, the nefarious Jake the Snake Roberts, or the unhinged Macho Man Randy Savage. Ricky stayed babyface not just in WWE, but also in the NWA/WCW, and in whatever other territory he found himself in throughout his career. During his second WWE run, Steamboat felt the yearning to go rogue, but was dissuaded from doing so by Pat Patterson, who claimed that Ricky could cut Bret Hart's head off with a chainsaw in the middle of the ring, and people still wouldn't buy him as a heel, and that turning him could harm his career. Number 8, Rob Van Dam. Though he was supposed to be a big dirty invader as part of the WCW-ECW alliance in 2001, fans couldn't help but take to Rob Van Dam and quickly turned him babyface. The whole effing show was unlike anything that had been seen before, and was embraced by the crowd for his combination of incredible athleticism, laid-back attitude, and unique appearance. Interestingly, RVD had first started to taste wrestling success after turning heel in ECW, where he played the mercenary Mr. Monday Night character, favoring WWE and working Monday Night Raw as opposed to the Philadelphia bingo halls. But eventually his standout performances turned him face there too, and he was arguably the company's biggest star before they went out of business. In WWE, as soon as Van Dam became a babyface, that is where he stayed, regardless of his storyline or position on the card. Even after years of creative inconsistency and plenty of stop-start pushes, RVD remained over to such an extent that he was booked to beat the Golden Goose John Cena for the WWE title at One Night Stand 2006. Interestingly, WWE wanted to turn him heel and make him a Paul Heyman guy during his last run with the company in 2013, but the Hall of Famer turned them down. Number 7, Tito Santana. Similar to Ricky Steamboat, Tito Santana was a babyface wherever he went and never got the opportunity to play a heel, despite occasionally wanting to. And like Steamboat, Santana was just too likable and had all the traits of a classic babyface. He was a good wrestler, first and foremost, and had a great knack for telling a simple good versus evil story and drawing people into his matches with his selling and expertly timed comebacks. An invaluable utility player, Tito was comfortable working with and getting a good match out of just about anyone, and could be used in the opening match, in a tag team, or even as a title contender. He never won the big one, but did hold the tag team and intercontinental prizes. He'd asked Vince to turn him heel when his Strikeforce tag team with Rick Martel headed for Splitsville, but the boss went with Martel instead and made him the model, while Santana eventually transformed into El Matador. There were once designs on making the bullfighter the world champion in order to grow the Spanish-speaking fan base, such was Tito's popularity, but McMahon eventually went with Bret Hart instead. I guess the Canadian dollar was worth more than the peso at that point. Number 6, Kelly Kelly. When Kelly Kelly debuted on ECW TV in the summer of 2006, she was aligned with a heel, portraying the girlfriend of the burly Mike Knox. But while her boo was a baddie, she was anything but. One thing that stopped her from being a heel from the get-go was her exhibitionist gimmick. I mean, let's face it, those horny ECW fans were hardly going to boo a young, attractive woman who was desperate to get her kit off, were they? Plus, in the storyline, it was implied that she was in an abusive relationship with Knox and was actively trying to break away from him and start relationships with babyfaces like CM Punk and Balls Mahoney. Well, she certainly had a type. As she evolved throughout the years, from glorified exotic dancer to Divas champion, Kelly Kelly was always happy and smiling and fighting against the odds and trying her darndest for the WWE universe. It was obvious that WWE saw her as the prototypical pretty, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, all-American gal, and turning her heel without a drastic makeover likely wouldn't have worked. Were Barbie Blank ever to return to WWE, she and the company would probably have to rethink her character and presentation, as the women's evolution has done much to change perceptions in the decades since her departure. Number 5, Bruno Sammartino. The greatest Italian-American superstar this side of Santino Marella and Nunzio, Bruno Sammartino was a true man of the people, his connection with those in cities like New York and Philadelphia leading to unparalleled success which made him an icon. The living legend's legacy began when, as a young upstart, he beat champion Nature Boy Buddy Rogers in just 48 seconds to capture the gold. That shocking upset took place in Madison Square Garden, a venue that Bruno would make his own during the 60s and 70s. Sammartino sold out the world's most famous arena more times than anyone and was so beloved that he held the title for 7 years, 8 months and a day. And that was just his first run, because he got the belt back again and held it a second time for a not too shabby 3 years, 4 months and 20 days. A solid, spirited competitor with a rugged style in the ring, Bruno was also sincere on the microphone when cutting promos and a class act outside the squared circle. He never broke a rule during matches and set box office records against every villain of the day, overcoming them all over a period of decades. He was a true trailblazer who transcended the sport, setting the standard for all babyfaces that followed. Number 4, Goldberg. The amazing organic success that was Goldberg in WCW was an incredible sight to behold. Fresh out of the WCW power plant and greener than Kermit the Frog on St. Patrick's Day, the former NFL football player got over huge by blasting through everyone on the roster in short but dynamic squash matches. The presentation grew more polished over time as demand developed as a worker, and he was at one point up there with the other channel's Steve Austin as far as popularity is concerned. WCW foolishly made him a heel. It did nothing for him and he hated it, but when he eventually made it to WWE, he was a good guy once more. And he's been one ever since, though his relationship with some of the fan base hasn't been as smooth as it was during his Monday Night Wars prime. He may act a little heelishly from time to time when he lets the dissenting voices get to him, but in his storylines he has always been positioned as the powerhouse hero, a lovable legend who would happily rip your throat out given half a chance. It would be refreshing to see the former World Heavyweight Champion cut loose and embrace his dastardly side, but his iconic status and work with charities and children's hospitals, he's a good guy in real life, guys, likely puts a stop to that ever happening. Number 3, Jim Duggan. Just because you're a noted flag-waving American patriot doesn't mean you're destined to be a career babyface in WWE. Look at Sergeant Slaughter, the filthy traitor who turned his back on Old Glory and became an Iraqi sympathizer during the height of the Gulf War. Or Hulk Hogan, the horrible twat who traded in the red, white and blue of the USA for the black and white of the NWO. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, however, seems to be an exception. Though he was a villain in Mid-South as part of the Rat Pack stable, Duggan was a consummate face in WWE and made headlines when he was arrested for a DUI while sharing a car with the hated Iron Sheik, a kayfabe-demolishing act that had serious repercussions when it came to his career. WCW, in their infinite wisdom, made Hacksaw a heel and put him in the Team Canada group because why not? When Hacksaw returned to WWE in the mid-2000s, he did so as the cuddly 2x4 wielding teddy bear of a bygone era and settled into a nice spot as a lower card nostalgia act, leading the chants of USA! USA! Another performer who just seems like a decent bloke IRL, Duggan probably had it in him to be a decent heel, and I wish he'd been given the chance to give it a go! Come on! Number 2, Koko B. Ware. Who's going to boo the Birdman? Not me, that's for darn sure. I simply have too much respect for those who look after our feathered friends. And Koko B. Ware was just the definition of a fun act. His colourful parrot Frankie a major part of it, but also beloved for his dancing, high-flying and eye-catching look. Koko had been a heel before WWE when he wrestled in the Memphis territory. As Sweet Sugar Brown, Ware was completely different, sporting a shaved head and Jimmy Hart as a mouthpiece while going up against Jerry Lawler. However, his athleticism and energy ensured that when he went to WWE, he would be one of the good guys, whether going solo in the prelims or teaming with someone like Owen Hart, also in the prelims. While popular, Ware never seemed to break out of the mid-card pack, but did carve out a niche for himself in his spot on the card. While he was always flapping his wings and high-fiving fans, he did work one WWE match as a heel against Tito Santana. The bout took place in Madison Square Garden and was filmed and released on Coliseum Home Video's Super Tape Volume 4, and it's really intriguing to watch Koko play heel for a night, complete with added aggression and cowardly acts like begging off. Number 1, The Ultimate Warrior. If you were a kid watching WWE in the late 80s or early 90s and you were asked to create your perfect wrestler, you would probably end up drawing some crude, out-of-proportion version of The Ultimate Warrior. He had absolutely everything you wanted for the era. He was jacked and cut, he wore colourful face paint, he ran through opponents in record time and made his entrance to a pulsating guitar riff. A merchandiser's dream, Warrior is proof positive that image can sometimes be everything. Never the greatest worker or promo in the business, Warrior was certainly a product of his time, and in his time could never turn heel. It didn't matter if he left and came back, as he did a few times. Whenever Warrior was on the bill, he was usually in a prime position and almost always going up against a top heel. Interestingly, there were tentative plans for him to become a villain in order to work a program with WWE champion Bret Hart. After hearing the pitch, however, Jim Hellwig, conscious of hurting a brand that he had helped create and build, countered that he would only consider it on the condition that his pay increased, he would get to sit house shows out, and that he would be given time off to audition for outside of WWE acting roles. Vince, unsurprisingly, didn't go for that, and the whole thing was called off.